How is it we can avoid terrible tenants? Well, I've had my fair share of terrible tenants, and I've learned a lot along the way in terms of how we can minimize the type of tenants that we maybe want to avoid. Problematic, challenging tenants, tenants that damage your property, tenants that don't pay rent, tenants with antisocial behavior, tenants all the neighbors get annoyed by, the tenants that you constantly get problems by. These are the type of tenants we want to avoid, because at the end of the day, as a landlord, essentially what we're looking for is somebody who's going to stay in the property, look after it, treat it as their home, pay the rent on time, let you know if there's maintenance he's doing, you get the maintenance done quickly, keep the property in good order. And hey presto, everyone's happy. That's the end goal, that's the objective. So what are the challenges that we face when we're looking for good tenants? Well, one of the things that we need to do when we're looking for good tenants is try and articulate the type of person we think this would suit. Now, we've got to be careful that we're not discriminating certain groups of people if we're being too descriptive of what is it that we want. So, for example, let's say in one of our HMOs, and we've got, say, five girls in their 20s or 5 ladies in their 20s that are living in that shared house. And then we have a male that's late 50s that's making an application to live in that shared house. That probably is not going to work. That's already going to be a recipe for disaster. It's going to be like the girls living with their parents. It's just not going to make any sense. So this is, from a compatibility point of view, type of people living there, making sure that works. But when we're talking about trying to attract the right type of person, what we mean is somebody who's going to be a good long-term tenant. Because generally, in the properties, when we talk about letting property, you want somebody who's going to be there for a long term. So let's say we're talking about a 3-bedroom house. Now, a young family with kids that are at the school nearby, both the parties are, for example, working, the couple, long, steady jobs nearby. That's an example of somebody who's probably going to be there for some time. It's unlikely to change. None of us can foresee the future, but that's likely to be the situation. So let me explain the process that we go through when we're vetting tenants to try and avoid the bad ones and get the best possible tenants for our properties. This might be a HMO for shared accommodation, or it might be a regular let as well, for example, an apartment or a house. So when we get the initial phone call, the person taking those calls, what they're doing, that they're getting an initial gut feeling of that person that's calling up, the type of things they're asking. And we might ask a few questions about what's got them thinking about moving, when they're looking to move to qualify, when is it they're looking to move, what they're currently earning in terms of affordability wise, whether it's going to meet their criteria, where they're currently staying, are they living with parents, or they're already renting, or do they need to give notice. So these are a few things that we need to ask. Some of it's qualification process, whether the person might be right before we get them out to view the property. So then when we do the viewing at the property, now generally in our business, it depends on your setup. Often it's different people that do things in our business. So the person that might take the phone call at the beginning may be different to the person that's going out to do the viewing. So the person that meets the potential tenant at the property to show them around may be a different person. And that person now also will run through some questions with them. So you're building a little bit of rapport, but you're really trying to get to know them and understand them a little bit more, what type of person that will be. Now remember, it feels like a little bit like an interview process. So the tenant will be on their best behavior. That tenant's behavior is not going to be any better at any time than it is when they're looking for that accommodation. What I'm trying to say is, because if you see anything you're concerned about, it's certainly not going to improve over time. It may even be worse if you decide to allow that tenant to become, or potential tenant become your tenant. So at this stage now, we've had 2 people meet that person. Let's decide they want to go ahead. They want to make an application. So they complete an application form. This asks a lot more information about, where they're already staying, things about credit history, their income, other expenditure they may have. So they complete all that paper and they send it in through to the office. This is where in our business, we have a third person would then pick up that particular application and look at it. So now we've got 3 different people that have been communicating with this individual, and we'll have 3 different perspectives of what that tenant is like. So what we're talking about now is what we've already found out, but there's also a gut feeling you'll have as well. What's this person like? Do they seem like they might be the right type of tenant for us? Now, at this application stage, what we're doing, we're vetting them financially to see if they can afford the property. So this is not just credit checking, because credit checking will give you a certain amount of information, but actually it's not, it doesn't really give you a good financial picture in my view. So the other thing we tend to do is ask for 3 months of bank statements. And what that does, that really shows us how somebody's spending their money, have they been paying their rent on time, how their salary, is it what they said it is? Has that been coming in? Or is it to come in and straight away it goes into an overdraft again? Because all it does is just clear the overdraft and they're constantly living in debt. Is there activity that's going on that might be a concern? For example, if somebody's spending huge amounts of money in terms of gambling, that could be a concern. So the bank statements tell you quite a lot of how somebody lives. And apart from this processing bit, the other thing that we're doing is we're reaching out to a previous landlord to find out what they were like as a tenant. Now here's the thing that we do that may be a little bit different. So rather than reaching out, say, to their current landlord who they are now leaving, what we do is go to a previous landlord to try and get information from them. And the reason being because the current landlord might be having issues with them and they may just say anything just to get rid of them because they don't want the problem, they want you to take on that problem. Whereas the previous landlord has already parted ways with them, and if there's any concerns, they're going to have no issue telling them that they were a real nightmare. Hey, if you're enjoying these Saj daily videos, then what I'd like you to do is click on my face over here to subscribe to the channel, and also click on the bell in order to get the notifications when these videos are being released. Then what to do next is click on this video here, and I'll see you over here on this video next.